Welcome to My First Boat. In this channel we will show you the step-by-step restoration of our 40-foot vintage steel yacht, with the goal to someday living on it full time. To start this week's program, we found ourselves in the helm of our boat, where last week we discovered some areas with seriously advanced rust. So advanced in fact that in many places the steel is completely gone and we are left with a bunch of holes that need to be taken care of. So last week we started by removing the most superficial parts with an angle grinder and a steel brush on it. And this is where we start off at the beginning of this week. You can see there are still many layers of rust which need to be removed by hand, because those areas are inaccessible for our power tools. So here we go. Equipped with a simple screwdriver, we remove all the loose layers of rust. After all those loose big chunks are gone, we go over it with the steel brush in one hand and a vacuum cleaner in the other. Now that all the loose bits are gone and that the surfaces are free from dust, we are ready to apply some rust converting oil. Alright, that was the forward area. Now let's start with the aft area. Here the rust has also reached apocalyptic levels, but still is not quite as advanced as on the other side, and especially we don't have as many holes that go through and through. So let's go ahead and clean up this area as good as possible. And then we apply copious amounts of rust converting oil. Alright, that's all we're gonna do here for now. Let's let this cure and we're gonna see what we're gonna do about it in a future video. Alright, next let's move into the bilge of the forward cabin, where I got a new seacock for this through hull here. And I wanted to ask your opinion on how to attach this and how to make it watertight. So I plan to use the good old 5200, because I'm worried that I cannot get it watertight with any other method. If you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments. Next, let's move into the aft cabin, where our totally rusted exhaust pipe resides. Against all advice from our dear viewers, we've decided to not remove it, instead to remove the rust as good as possible and to keep it for a little while longer. The problem is half the thing is inaccessible to any power tools, because it's either too close to the wall or too close to the floor. Plus I don't want to mess up the entire cabin again by grinding away the rust with an angle grinder. So I decided to scrape off the rust by hand with a wood file. And as you can see, this worked surprisingly well, especially for the areas on the bottom. And after all those big rust flakes have been removed, it doesn't look half as bad as it did before. At this point already, I'm actually quite confident that there won't be any issues with this exhaust pipe in the near future. Once more, we apply our good old Overtroll oil. And I will give you a full update on this and show you how it turned out in the next video. For now, let's go back into the helm, where we try to get everything ready for painting, which means that we have to remove any obsolete accessories, close any holes, get all of the angle grinding and welding out of the way, and so on. Let's start with this searchlight, which, using an incandescent halogen bulb and being all manual, has become a bit outdated in our times. And I have to admit, it's kind of cool, so sorry buddy. It seems to be only screwed on, so let's remove the screws first. And right there I lost my patience and took the angle grinder to cut off the screws. Here's the first big hole we'll have to deal with. Let's get that cleaned up a little. And then there's that socket. I got just the right tool for that. Now we can clean up those two holes and see what we have to do to close them. First, we cut out the part that we're gonna weld in later. Then we trace the outlines onto the roof, so we know where to cut. I then apply a trick, which a welder taught me. You drill a 6 to 7 mm hole at each corner of the piece you want to cut. When you then cut the sides, you can cut right into those holes you just drilled, avoiding any overlapping cuts at the corners. I placed my drill holes a bit too far in, so it didn't turn out very clean, but basically that's how you would do it. Finally, I prepared a new piece by cutting a wedge into the borders, and then we're ready for welding. First a couple of spot welds so we can get rid of the magnet. Make sure it sits flush on every side, and then we can make bigger welds. And here's the result. There are a couple of holes where the metal was a bit too thin, but I took care of that afterwards. This next part was too small to apply the trick, so I just cut it out straight. Here too, I fixed the remaining holes and gaps afterwards. Let's close the welds from underneath, clean up everything, apply some rust converting oil. Here I applied some filler paste and then some zinc aluminum spray to protect the metal against corrosion. Same here on the top. I apply some more filler paste, and then this is almost ready for painting. Alright, next let's take care of that rainwater draining pipe, which is like the gutters of our boat, and which, by design from the manufacturer, run through the inside of the boat. Now the area to cut was extremely tight, but after some struggle I did manage to get it out. I actually bought the exact pipe needed to replace the old one. But after further consideration, it just didn't feel right to weld that back in, so I decided to simply close the holes. First I remove the surrounding paint so it doesn't catch on fire while welding. Then I use a piece of paper and a round file to cut out the exact shape of the hole, for which I need to cut a plug. I then cut out that tiny piece of metal and the one for the other hole, and grind it into shape further with a sandpaper disc. These are now ready for welding. And after grinding it flush and protecting against corrosion, I also applied some filler paste here. Next, there's this cable coming through the roof, which I'm not gonna need, so let's remove it and close the hole. I use a little piece of metal pressed in place with some cardboard to provide a support for the piece I want to weld in. So here we go. Welding, grinding, protect against corrosion, and filler paste. Done. Alright, on to the final little job in this series, which is to remove that old solar panel. After this, of course, we are left with 4 little holes in the roof, which we have to close with the welder. Alright, next let's finish up the frame for the new hatch, which we started last week. All of the welding is already done. What's left to do is to flesh this out with some glass fiber filler. Luckily, this is one of my favorite parts of the job, so here we go. First we have to build some kind of a ramp here, left and right, to join up flush with those parts we welded in on the side. For the first rough trimming I use the angle grinder with a lot of caution. Next, let's do the same on the opposite side. And for more fine trimming I use a sanding tool. Then I felt the time was right to drill the holes for the new hatch. First I drill a pilot hole with a smaller drill, and then the actual hole with a larger drill, in this case 7.5mm. Next I applied the zinc aluminum spray, and because of that day the temperature was close to freezing, I thought I'd heat up the metal with a torch. Now you can't see it here in the shot I did for the camera, but I made sure the spray went well in between the two metals I welded in. And then we do the same on the outside, let it dry, and then this is ready to apply more glass fiber filler. Here's a look at the rough result before any further grinding and sanding. And then we use the angle grinder again with surgical precision to get the cured glass fiber paste into the right shape. And after every round of grinding and sanding, I apply a coat of zinc aluminum spray to protect the bare metal from corrosion. Now we are almost done. There are just a few holes and irregularities to take care of, and for this we're gonna use the fine grain filler paste. And here's the almost final result before applying the paint. And after applying the last coat of anti-corrosion spray, we can have a look at the final result. I'm particularly pleased how this area turned out. In the end there were still some holes and irregularities left. So I put down a last round of filler paste, sanded everything again, and then put on the last coat of paint. Alright, this time for real, it's finished. Any remaining imperfections will be taken care of by the several layers of paint that we're gonna apply. And here's the final result. It's a bit wider than it's long, but I don't think that's gonna disturb anyone. Now then, let's apply some paint, and then we're done with that. Right, now here's some bonus material of some smaller jobs I did, which I didn't really find a place for in the video. Nevertheless, there you go. Here I'm removing this little platform. There are some random pieces of metal welded in, which I have no use for, so they have to go. Here in the forward bilge there are these angle profiles, presumably to bolt down a water pump or something. And at this point I'm signing off. Thank you all for watching, and see you again next week.